Protocol buffers, or protobufs for short, are a data serialization format. That means they define a structure that data is sent across the network. What this means is when a server talks to another server, the shape of that data will be in the form of a protobuf. In practice, what this usually means is that there is a client-server relationship where a client sends a request to a server and the server sends a response back, and that request and response will be in the format of a protobuf. Now, JSON is also a very popular data serialization format, but JSON has its advantages and disadvantages. One advantage of using JSON is that it is really easy to just use in a REST API if you want to whip something up really quickly. Now, if we look at an example of a JSON object, there's actually a lot of data that does not actually need to be sent across the network. If you look at the field names, the name, age, city, is, student, and hobbies, as well as the quotation marks and the semicolons and the brackets, this is extra data that can be avoided if you are using protobufs. What this means is protobufs do not need to send the red text here, and instead they only need to send the white text across the network, saving you a lot of cost in terms of bandwidth. It allows you to do this because you have to define a structure that the client and the server must agree on in order for the data to be sent across the network. As you can see here, we also define the data type along with the field. We have string, int, boolean, and a repeated field to define lists or arrays. Notice that these are also ordered, so that allows the client and the server to serialize and deserialize the binary data because they do not have the tags like the JSON objects do. Now, protobufs are language agnostic, but you do need a way to serialize and deserialize the protobufs in an easy enough way, and grpc makes that pretty easy, and I'm going to show an example using grpc right now. So we're going to start with an empty project here. I'm just going to do an example in Golang. We're going to make a Golang server. Remember, there's a client-server relationship, so we're going to start with the server, and the first thing we're going to do is define that proto file. So we have a .proto file, and we're going to define a service here, and this service defines the remote procedural calls inputs and outputs. In our case, we have a hello request with the message field, and we'll give it a second field as a name. Notice how we have to number those. And the second, for the response, we have a hello response, and that'll just be a single field. So that does it for our hello.proto file. We'll go into, I'm going to put to actually use it in. And I have a little handy bash script available that I wrote out that just uses the grpc command line tools to compile those proto file down to Golang and eventually TypeScript code. So I dropped that bash script in, and I'm going to go into and start writing the Go code that'll act as the server code for our grpc server using the protobufs. So we defined a remote procedural call, so we're defining the server struct, and then we're going to define the remote procedural call, and the RPC has to have our defined inputs and outputs that we defined inside our proto file. So notice we have a hello request for the parameter and a hello response for the return field, and then we're going to go into the main function and actually host our server on port 5551. So we're going to do some quick error logging here and then some normal logging to show that the server is listening on port 551, and then we're actually going to instantiate a new grpc server here, and then we have to register our service, which holds our remote procedural call, and we register that to the server, and then finally we're listening on this last line of code here. So after that's done, we have our grpc server ready to go, and now I'm gonna quickly move over and make an empty TypeScript project. We installed TypeScript, and we installed the grpc dependency that allow us to call the server code and call a request. And I'll put the links for all these down in the description below of the YouTube video. So now we're just gonna do the imports for the client side. Remember, this is the client side code that will be sending requests to the Golang server that we were writing, and I wanted to do it in 2 different languages because I wanted to prove that protobufs are language agnostic, and grpc makes it really easy to use multiple languages to communicate with one each other. So now what I did was I just loaded the protobuf definition. This is so TypeScript can read the proto file, and then that'll give us types, which was really nice when you're using grpc, because then you can see what you have available. And for example, we have this say hello auto completed RPC function. It knows that I have the say hello remote procedure called defined, and we don't have to do any guessing there. So now we're just going to do some error logging and console log the response, and then we can test out the server. All right, we're just going to compile the TypeScript down to JavaScript real quick, and then we're going to try. Oh, we got an error. The error, we forgot to write their name in the path here to find our protobuf. And so now we're going to try again. Now this time we're going to run the Golang server, make sure that is running, and then we can go back to the TypeScript client and run that code, and all that code is send a request to the backend server. All right, and we got a message back from the server. It says hello from the server, and then simul shift hello from the client. So taking a closer look at the message, we can see it says hello from the server, and what we're actually doing is printing the response on the client from the server, so we can verify that the information is sent. And it says simul shift from the client, and if we go back to the server, we can see that we have defined a message hello from the server, and we are concatenating the request.from and the request.message, where the message is hello from the client. So that was a simple server using grpc with protobufs in Golang and TypeScript. I hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, please give me a thumbs up and a follow, subscribe. I do plan on going into more details so we can really dive deeper into the details of using grpc and protobufs. But for now, that's it. Cheers, my friends.